like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling something that I know a lot of you have been writing in about and asking about, and that is jealousy and insecurity in a boyfriend. And we have a really great article to help us kind of unpack all of this today.
Yeah.
It's called How to Deal with Your Jealous and Insecure Boyfriend While Strengthening Your Bond.
Ah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And, you know, even if you're not someone who is currently experiencing this in a relationship, I think that understanding these dynamics can be really helpful for any relationship.
Absolutely. And, you know, this is something that everyone goes through at some point in their lives. So this deep dive is all about gaining a better understanding of these complex emotions and, you know, figuring out how to approach them productively.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that the article really does a good job of is digging into the root causes of these insecurities. You know, it's not just about that surface level jealousy. It's about really getting to the core of where these feelings are stemming from.
Right. And often those roots, like in past experiences, you know, like if you think about things like infidelity in a previous relationship or even things that have happened in childhood that might have created these patterns of insecurity. And so, you know, understanding that backstory, I think, is super crucial to, you know, helping your partner feel more secure.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And the article even talks about working through these past issues, you know, exes, heartbreaks, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And I can imagine those conversations being super delicate.
Oh, for sure.
What's the best way to approach that without making him feel like he's being put on trial?
The key is to create the space of non-judgmental listening. And you could say something like, hey, I know that you've been hurt before. And I want to understand how those experiences might be affecting you now. So it's about showing genuine curiosity and empathy, not pointing fingers or placing blame.
Okay, so active listening and validating his feelings are really crucial.
Yes.
But the article also emphasizes this importance of reassurance.
Yes.
And I've definitely been guilty of, you know, saying things like, oh, come on, you have nothing to worry about.
Right.
Which probably isn't very helpful.
Yeah, it's so natural to want to, like, reassure your partner quickly.
Right.
But sometimes those blanket statements can feel kind of dismissive.
Right.
So it's more effective to acknowledge his feelings and then offer reassurance. Like, for example, instead of just saying, don't worry, you could say, I understand you're feeling insecure, but I want you to know I love and value, you know, your sense of humor or whatever it is he's insecure about. You know, you can be specific. So that shows you're really paying attention to his concerns.
So it's about tailoring that reassurance to his specific insecurities.
Exactly.
But what about when reassurance just isn't enough? The article talks about setting boundaries.
Yeah.
And that feels really tricky to me.
Yes, it is.
It's like walking a tightrope between being supportive and then standing your ground.
Right. It's a balancing act for sure. So reassurance is important, but you also need to draw the line when jealousy starts to infringe on your freedom or leads to, you know, controlling behavior. So, you know, think about it in terms of attachment styles. You know, if someone has an anxious attachment style, they might crave that constant reassurance, but you can't be their sole source of validation. And, you know, it's healthy for both of you to have independent lives.
That makes a lot of sense. So how do you actually go about setting those boundaries? It feels like a recipe for an argument.
It can be so clear. Communication is key.
Okay.
You know, and you might say something like, I understand you're feeling jealous, but I need you to trust me when I go out with my friends. It doesn't mean I love you any less.
Right.
So it's about setting those expectations early on and then being consistent.
Consistency is so important.
Yes.
And speaking of communication, this article is all about being transparent and open. But how do you do that without feeling like you have to report your every move?
Yeah, it's not about giving like a minute-by-minute account of your day. It's more about, you know, being upfront about your intentions.
Okay.
Like if you're going out with a friend that, you know, your boyfriend tends to get jealous of, you can let him know in advance. Like, hey, I'm meeting up with so-and-so for coffee tomorrow. You know, I value your trust, and I wouldn't do anything to jeopardize that.
Okay. So it's about proactively addressing those potential triggers and communicating in a way that builds trust.
Exactly.
So then sometimes actions can speak louder than words.
Oh, absolutely.
Tell me more about that.
Well, the article talks about actively including your boyfriend in your life, you know, introducing him to your friends, involving him in your hobbies. It's about demonstrating that he's a priority in your life and there's no need to feel threatened.
That makes sense. But I'm curious, what about when those actions backfire?
Oh, yeah.
Like I once tried to introduce my boyfriend to a friend who he was super jealous of, and it turned into this awkward showdown.
Oh, no, tell me about it.
It was a disaster. They just glared at each other the whole time.
Yeah.
I felt like I was chaperoning a middle school dance.
That's hilarious, but I can see how it would be stressful in the moment.
Oh, yeah?
So sometimes I think those introductions need to be handled with extra care.
Right.
Maybe like a group setting where the focus isn't solely on their interaction.
Right.
That way it feels less confrontational.
A good buffer zone is key.
Yes.
But even with all the communication and the reassurance in the world, sometimes it feels like you're hitting a wall. What about when those insecurities run really deep?
Then it might be time to shift the focus from managing his jealousy to encouraging personal growth.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. Let's unpack that in part 2. And we're back, diving deeper into the world of jealousy and insecurity. Before the break, we were talking about those times when the reassurance and the boundaries, they just aren't cutting it.
Right.
And this article, How to Deal with Your Jealous and Insecure Boyfriend, while strengthening your bond, suggests encouraging personal growth. And I think this is where things can get really tricky. How do you encourage someone to work on themselves without sounding like you're giving them a to-do list for being a better boyfriend?
You've hit on a really sensitive point, and it's not about presenting like a list of demands
Right.
or implying that he needs to fix himself to be worthy of love. It's about supporting his journey of self-discovery and encouraging him to build his own sense of self-worth.
Okay, so framing it as support rather than criticism.
Exactly.
That makes sense. But what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, the article gives some great examples.
Okay.
Think about things like encouraging him to pursue hobbies or interests that bring him joy. Maybe he's always wanted to learn a new language or take up photography or join a sports league.
Right.
When people feel passionate and engaged in their own lives,
Yeah.
it can do wonders for their self-esteem.
That's true.
Yeah.
I know, like when I'm feeling down, getting lost in a creative project always helps me.
Right.
But what about when those hobbies start triggering jealousy? Like what if he's spending all this time at pottery class and suddenly I'm the one feeling insecure?
That's a valid concern, and it highlights the importance of balance. Encouraging personal growth shouldn't come at the expense of neglecting the relationship.
Right.
So this is a conversation that you can have, openly and honestly. You might say, I'm so happy that you're enjoying pottery, but I also miss spending quality time with you.
Right.
Can we find a way to balance both?
Communication is key, yet again.
It really is.
It's like a recurring theme in this whole deep dive.
Yeah, communication is always key.
And another crucial element of personal growth is learning to challenge those negative thought patterns. Oftentimes insecurity stems from this belief that we're not good enough, not worthy of love.
Right.
I've definitely been down that rabbit hole before.
We all have. It's part of being human. But the key is to recognize those thoughts and then challenge their validity.
Right.
Like, is there actual evidence to support these beliefs, or are they just echoes of, past hurts or limiting self-perceptions?
It's like fact-checking your own anxieties.
Exactly.
But sometimes even with the best intentions, those negative thoughts can feel really overwhelming.
Yeah.
And the article mentions therapy.
Right.
And I think that's a topic that deserves a deeper dive.
Absolutely. Therapy can be an incredibly valuable tool for, exploring those deeper issues and developing healthy coping mechanisms.
But there's still such a stigma around it.
Yeah.
I can imagine some guys getting really defensive if their partner suggests therapy. How do you approach that conversation in a way that feels supportive rather than accusatory?
You're right. It requires a lot of sensitivity, and you might say something like, I've been thinking about going to therapy myself to work on some personal stuff. And I think it could be really beneficial for us as a couple, too. It's not about saying anything is wrong with us, but rather investing in our emotional well-being.
Framing it as a team effort.
Exactly.
I like that. And it normalizes therapy, taking away that something is wrong with you vibe.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that therapy isn't a magic bullet.
Right.
It's a process that requires commitment and vulnerability.
So it's about encouraging him to embark on that journey of self-discovery, both individually and as a couple.
Yeah.
But what about the flip side? The article also talks about the importance of maintaining your own independence.
That's crucial. A healthy relationship consists of two individuals who are also whole on their own.
Right.
If you're constantly catering to his insecurities and neglecting your own needs,
Right.
it creates an imbalance that can ultimately harm the relationship.
It's like that oxygen mask analogy.
Yes.
You have to put on your own mask first before you can help others.
Perfect analogy.
Right.
And, when you prioritize your own well-being,
Yeah.
you model healthy behaviors for your partner. He sees that you value your own time, your friendships, your passions,
Right.
and it sends this message that, you're not relying on him to complete you,
Right.
which can ironically make him feel more secure.
It's that counterintuitive thing. The more secure you are in yourself,
Right.
the more secure he feels in the relationship.
Precisely. And it prevents resentment from building up on either side.
Resentment is a relationship killer, for sure. Now, I know we've talked a lot about communication and boundaries, but I'm curious, are there any specific actions or behaviors that can help build trust and reduce jealousy?
Well, the article actually has some great tips on this.
Okay.
One of them is to be mindful of social media, If you know that certain posts or interactions tend to trigger his jealousy,
Right.
try to be more mindful of what you share online. It's not about censoring yourself,
Right.
but rather just being sensitive to his insecurities.
It's such a practical tip.
Yeah.
In the age of Instagram and TikTok, it's so easy to forget how those seemingly harmless posts can be perceived.
Absolutely. And another tip is to avoid comparing him to other men. Even seemingly harmless comments like, oh, my friend's boyfriend always does the dishes,
Right.
can really chip away at his self-esteem.
Comparisons are never helpful.
Yeah.
It's like saying, why can't you be more like someone else? Ouch.
Right. It sends the message that he's not good enough as he is.
So it's about focusing on his strengths and celebrating what makes him unique.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, but before we move on to the next section, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier, this idea of leading by example.
Okay.
You said that when you're confident and secure in yourself, it sets a positive tone for the relationship. But what if you're struggling with your own insecurities? How can you authentically model those healthy behaviors
Yeah.
when you're not quite there yet?
That's a great question, and it's something that we can delve into further in part 3.
Right.
It's all about recognizing that personal growth is an ongoing journey for both partners.
And that it's okay to not have all the answers figured out yet.
Exactly. Relationships are a constant dance of learning and evolving and supporting each other through those ups and downs.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
But there's still so much more to explore. So we'll be back in a flash for the final part, where we'll unpack even more strategies for navigating jealousy and insecurity. And we are back for the final part of our deep dive. We've been exploring this really insightful advice piece called How to Deal with Your Jealous and Insecure Boyfriend While Strengthening Your Bond.
Yeah.
And uncovering some real gems about communication and boundaries and personal growth.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
One of the most powerful takeaways for me is that, dealing with jealousy and insecurity, it's not about fixing your partner. It's about fostering this environment of understanding and support and mutual growth.
That's such a great point.
Yeah.
It's not about trying to mold someone into the perfect boyfriend.
Right.
It's about working together to create a relationship where both of you can thrive.
Exactly. And, remember, personal growth is an ongoing process for both partners. And before the break, we were talking about leading by example, and you raised this really important question.
Yeah.
How can you authentically model those healthy behaviors
Right.
if you're still working through your own insecurities?
Yes. Because, let's be real, who among us doesn't have a few insecurities lurking in the shadows?
Exactly. We're all works in progress.
Yeah.
The key is to be honest with yourself and your partner about where you're at. You don't have to pretend to have it all figured out.
So it's about being open about your own journey of self-discovery.
Right.
And showing him that it's okay to be vulnerable and work through those challenges.
Exactly. And you know what? Sometimes that vulnerability can actually strengthen your bond. When you're both willing to share your struggles and support each other's growth,
Right.
it creates this deeper level of intimacy and trust.
That makes sense. It's like saying, hey, I'm not perfect,
Right.
but I'm committed to working on myself, and I hope you'll support me in that.
Precisely. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. Therapy can be an amazing resource
Yes.
for, both individuals and couples working through these issues. It provides a safe space to explore those deeper rooted insecurities and, develop healthier coping mechanisms.
We've talked a lot about addressing the boyfriend's insecurities, But this article also stresses the importance of honoring your own needs and maintaining your own independence.
Absolutely. Remember that oxygen mask analogy?
Yeah.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
Prioritizing your own well-being, your friendships, your hobbies, your career aspirations. It's not selfish. It's essential for a healthy relationship.
It's about showing him that you're a whole person with a rich life outside of the relationship, which can actually make you a more engaging and attractive partner.
Exactly. It's that spark of individuality that keeps things interesting, and it prevents codependency, which can really suffocate a relationship.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between togetherness and independence.
Yes.
One thing the article touched on that I found really interesting was this power of shared experiences. It suggests things like traveling together or trying new hobbies or even just planning fun date nights.
Yes, creating positive memories together can be incredibly bonding. It shifts the focus away from jealousy and insecurity.
Right.
And it reminds you both of the joy and the connection you share.
And speaking of shared experiences, I have to confess, I've been holding back a hilarious story
Okay.
that perfectly illustrates this point. Remember earlier when we were talking about those awkward introductions?
Oh, yeah.
And I mentioned my disastrous attempt to introduce my boyfriend to a friend he was jealous of.
Oh, yes, the infamous awkward showdown.
Well, I tried to redeem myself by inviting them both to a group cooking class,
Okay.
thinking it would be, fun, neutral activity. Little did I know my boyfriend had secretly signed us up for a couple's chocolate making class.
Oh, no, you walked right into that one.
I did. And to make matters worse, I'm a terrible cook.
Oh.
Let's just say there was more chocolate on our faces and clothes than in the molds. It was a complete disaster.
That's hilarious, but I bet it broke the ice, right?
It did. We were all laughing so hard the tension just melted away. It was a reminder that sometimes the best way to overcome these challenges is to just embrace the absurdity of it all.
Right.
And just have fun together.
I love that it's a reminder that even when things go wrong, those shared experiences can create these lasting memories and strengthen your bond in these unexpected ways.
And that sometimes a little bit of chocolate chaos is just what a relationship needs.
Exactly. So if you're navigating jealousy and insecurity in your relationship, remember, it's a journey, not a destination. Be patient with yourself, communicate openly, and don't be afraid to embrace those moments of imperfection along the way.
Those imperfections are what make life and love interesting. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to encourage you to revisit the source material, that insightful advice piece, and really consider how these strategies might apply to your own unique situation.
Every relationship is different, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution. But with effort and understanding and a healthy dose of humor, you can navigate these challenges and emerge with a stronger, more fulfilling relationship.
And on that note, we will leave you to dive back into your own lives. Remember, you've got this. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.